Ford Galaxy second generation, same platform as Ford S-Max. Today we are going to replace front brake pads and brake discs. First, what we're going to do is remove the front wheel, jack up the car. I've removed all 5 nuts just to save your time. We remove the wheel and then don't use jack on its own. As you can see, have a look in here. I'm using jack and I'm using on a suspension bushing. I'm using stand as well. We don't take our chances, so jack it up properly. First, what we are going to do to remove this spring, you can either squeeze it with the pliers or you need to take it out of this little hole. There we go. Install it later. That's the spring that keeps your brake pads and caliper, stops it from knocking, you know, because it can be a little bit loose. Now we have to remove 2 bolts that hold the caliper. There are 2 plastic covers. One is here, another one identical. Sorry if you can't see, but trust me, it's there at the top. 2, one here, another one here. 2 little plastic caps. You remove them. And then you take 7mm Allen key and remove 2 pins / bolts. One is here, another one at the top. Once you got them loose, you can take them out with little pliers. So as you can see, it's like a bolt, 7mm hexagon hole in there. We're gonna lubricate them later as well. So do the same for the top. You can help it with a screwdriver from this side as well, if you like. Everyone has its own favorite position. And then take it out, put it away somewhere safe so we don't lose it. You can take a little brake bar and wiggle it out of here. One of the brake pads will stay here on a desk. Another one will stay with the piston. I'm gonna show you in a minute. Oopsie. A little bit of brutal force. There we go. So, as you can see, these brake pads are pretty low. Nothing much left on them. So you can take it out of piston. It has like a close. It goes inside here in the piston. So we don't want to leave it hanging on a brake line because we don't want to have any pressure on the brake line. So what we are going to do, I'm going to use luggage straps. I'm going to hang it on this little hook, onto this little hook, and then I'm going to hang it onto the spring so it stays here. Now we are down to the disc. To be able to remove the disc, we need to remove the bracket that holds the caliper. 2 18mm bolts. 2 18mm bolts. This one's here. They can be a bit tight. They have to be tight. And we are going to remove these bolts. Using a brake bar. But I hope, yes. Right, that was easy. And the second one, I'll just break them loose and then I'll finish with the ratchet. There we go. And then once they're loose, more or less, you can finish it off with the ratchet. Once you got them loose, you can eventually remove these bolts and take the bracket out. We're gonna clean it properly. There have been some thread locks, that's why they were so tight. They have to be tight, as I mentioned before. So all we got to do now is remove the disc. Because it has been here for a while, we're gonna give it a little knock to take it out. Sometimes, you see this little hole? Sometimes on some cars there is a little bolt. On our car we don't have any bolts here, so it's just a little hole. And sometimes they have like a clips around some of these studs. So make sure there is no clips. If there is one, remove it with a screwdriver. There's like a little wrapping clip, you know. So our disc currently is held only purely by rust on the other side. What we're going to do, I'm going to take a hammer and give it a good knock on this side. One thing I need to mention, very important, please pay attention. No, look here. No. What I'm saying, never ever press the brake pedal when your caliper is off, because let me have a look in here. I'm gonna explain you how it works. This is how your brakes work. When you press the brakes, fluid comes inside this piston and squeezes brake pads upon your disc. So if you press your brakes, this will go all the way up, and sometimes it can be really big struggle to push it in. So don't press the brakes with the caliper off. And what we're gonna do, we're gonna use special tool to push this piston back in. But going back to the disc, I think it's moving now. There we go. Remove the disc. What we want to do before putting new disc, we want to give it a good clean, so it all stays nice and clean in here, no dust. When it gets too dusty, try not to breathe. Yeah, I'm using metal brush. Any tools you need for this job, have a look and link in below this video. I've got a lot of useful links. I'm not selling those tools, it's just to eBay. That gives you variety of choice. Right. What we're going to do, I'm using copper grease as well. So next time our disc doesn't get that stuck. So it has a copper grease, is good for holding temperature. It's grease that can hold the temperature. Perfect for brakes, because brakes, they get hot. Here comes our new disc. Here comes the new disc. And in our case, as you can see, it's all silver. It's painted by paint, so it prevents it from rusting on a warehouse, where it gets stored and transported. Some of them come with the bags, sealed bags, and they all covered in oil. So less than anything, we want the oil on our brakes. So this one you don't really have to clean it that well, because it's all clean anyway. But I'm using brake and clutch cleaner. Doesn't have to be this branch, but it's always good to give it a good clean on all sides. Oh, nice. So it doesn't have any grease on your brakes. Next thing we're going to do, we're going to take our bracket, get all the rubbish out of it using metal brush. While doing so, use respiratory mask or don't breathe, because this dust can be not very good for your health. I'm running out of air, I can't speak. Next thing I want to do, to make sure these balls don't get seized, we are going to apply a little bit of copper grease. So next time you'll have to remove these bolts, you'll be thankful to yourself that your bolts actually can be removed. So what are we doing? What am I doing? putting them this bracket around here. Start these bolts with your hand, so you definitely know you're not cross threading, because it's also the other unpleasant thing to get your bolt broken. There we go, easy peasy. Tightening torque for these bolts. Some say, normally mechanic what will tell you is FT, which as we know is freaking tight, but unfortunately I can't get the torque values for Ford. My normal car is a Volkswagen VW, so on my VW it's 90 Newton meters plus 90 degrees. Well, what you can do is just make them tight, as tight as you can. Without, obviously don't go ridiculous, don't break them. They're not that easy to break anyway, but you got the idea. I'm using a torque wrench set for 90 degrees. $18mm bolt, so that's 90, and then we turn a bit more to make them tight. Because I'm reusing these bolts, I'm not gonna turn 90 degrees because they've been used already, they are a bit stretched, so just pretty much make them tight without breaking them. Because brake pads were thin already, this piston came out to be able to squeeze them up on this, so we need to push it all the way back. Unfortunately you can't do it with your hands because these are pretty tight. Try not to twist the brake line too much. And we're using special tool with a thread, so it's gonna push this piston all the way in a minute. So before we push it, you must understand that brake fluid will rise because it will go back. So before we start pushing this piston in, there are two ways to allow brake fluid to go back. You can either allow it to go back to the system. In that case, have a look in here. We already put some tissues underneath here, so you can open your brake extension tank and keep observing when the brake fluid rises, so it doesn't spills over, and you can't get brake fluid on your paint because it will damage your paint. The other way, this little nipple on the back of the caliper, you pull this rubber bit off, and what we can do, we can use a little tube. I bought this one in Halfords for $5, so together with replacing your brake pads, at the same time you're gonna remove some old brake fluid. It's not so critical. Normally what I do on my car is just push it back into the system. Once you replace it, so it's not that big deal, so you don't have to do it. This little tube has a valve on the other side, so what we are going to do, we are going to undo this nipple a bit more. So this tube has a valve on the other end, so air doesn't come back in case if it wants to come in. But if you don't have a valve, just make sure that you immerse the other end of the tube into the brake fluid so it doesn't swallow any air. We don't need it, we have a valve. So what we are going to do now, we are going to push this piston all the way in. As you can see, it goes in. All the way, as far as it goes. I think it's if it's spinning together with this bit, you can hold it with a spanner, but it's not so necessary. Here it goes. As far as you go, as it goes, because our new brake pads are much thicker than our old ones. That's it. And here comes the reason why it all went back to the brake fluid tank instead of the nipple, because I didn't jam the brake line. So what you have to do, if you want to do it through the nipple, get one of these hose clamps and then jam the brake line, and then you can do it properly so it doesn't go back. But as I said before, it doesn't matter. Most of garages I know, and what I normally do, I just push the piston back in, not bothered without brake fluid going out through the nipple. Up to you, your choice. For perfection, the best way is to jam the brake line, that little hose that goes to the caliper, and then open that nipple and get the fluid out through that. So all the brake fluid came back in. As you can see, level has raised. Yes. So make sure nothing gets over. We will take a little bit of that off later. I'm gonna close this little valve. Don't over tighten it. It's only little 9mm nut, so as long as you close it just good enough, you can remove this. Well, it was worth trying anyway. Right. Put this nipple back on. Nothing came out of there anyway, so normally what I do, I don't bother with this nipple. I just push it in and then control the liquid into that brake fluid tank, and that's all. So we're gonna apply some copper grease onto these fingers, because we're gonna put some pads in here. Now I'll apply a little bit of copper grease on this close, so it's all nice and smooth. And then you simply push it inside this hole. We push this brake pad with this close inside this hole. There we go. Happy. Make sure it sits nice and straight. Now we take our other brake pad and simply put it into this bracket, simply like that. And then we're gonna apply a bit of copper grease in here, so it's nice and smooth. And then we take our caliper, make sure the brake line is not twisted, so as you can see, so it stays all the way straight. and then you put it back on. So what we're gonna do, I've cleaned these little pins. Well, I'm applying some silicone grease on it. Silicone grease is as good as copper grease, but some people on forums, they recommend to use silicone grease instead of copper grease on caliper pins, because they say copper, it leaves some metal residue and it makes them a little bit sticky with the flow of time. Some people don't mind to use copper grease, so it's up to you. Start them with your hand. Make sure they find a happy position. Same as the other one here. They have to be pushed through first. And make sure they go in nice and happy. Now this one is in. Then tightening torque for this one on my VW Chiron is 35 Newton meters, and that's what I'm gonna do for these pins, because it's about the same size bolts. So just had a look at my website wilsonmotors.com. Same pins and same similar brakes are used in my previous car, Audi A6. Tightening torques for these pins are 25 Newton meters, not 35, but 25. So that's what we're going to do. 25. Hang on. Yeah, 25. Sorted. Now you can put these little covers back on. I'm gonna give it another good clean with the brake cleaner to make sure it's all nice and good. It's still loose because we didn't press the brakes yet. To put this spring back in. So these two bits go into these holes, and these two ends, they stay on that. So what we can do, using a screwdriver, some people use pliers, whichever is your favorite position, as I always say. There we go. Click. So this is in. All we have to do now, put the wheel back on. Do the other end as well. And before you go anywhere with the new brakes, make sure you firmly press brake pedal a few times to put that brake fluid into the calipers. So what I'm going to do now, I'm gonna drain some of that brake fluid. So this brake fluid, some of it, we drain it because we topped it up before, after we've done the other wheel. And make sure you don't leave it open for too long, because we don't want brake fluid to get in contact with the air, because it can absorb moisture from the air. For now, really my best, so I splashed it a little bit. Nothing is on the paint, so it's all plastics here, but make sure it doesn't get on your paint, because it can damage your paintwork. So before you go, press the brake pedals a few times to make sure that brake fluid gets into those pistons, so they're nice and firm, you know, because for first times you press brakes, they might not work properly. So, and first few miles, like 50 miles, make sure you leave a long distance before you need to brake, because the brakes, they still need to adapt, still need to get married to the discs. That's it, put the wheel back on, off you go. Thank you for watching. More stuff about this car, some other cars, see my website, wilsonmotors.com.
Smile.